The Pentagon now says a U.S. Navy destroyer shot down several missiles and drones that were launched from Yemen.
The crew of the guided missile destroyer USS Carney, operating in the northern Red Sea earlier today, shot down 3 land attack cruise missiles.
2:44 local, Eastern Mediterranean, T-minus 4 minutes until impact. 4 missiles, already in the air, already hunting. Aboard the USS Donald Cook, 281 sailors have no idea that a targeting solution for their ship is already solved, already committed, already burning through the dark sky above the sea they've called home for 7 months. The watch team is running normal patrol routine. Coffee's hot, radar picture looks clean, the night is ordinary, until it isn't. 4 missiles, 1 destroyer, 27 minutes. This is the story of how that math resolved itself and why it ended the way it did. Let me put you there first. The USS Donald Cook, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, displaces nearly 9,500 tons and stretches 509 feet from bow to stern. It is, in the simplest terms, on one of the most capable warships ever built by any nation. Her Aegis combat system, the AN/SPY-1D phased array radar, can track hundreds of targets simultaneously, discriminate between threats and noise in milliseconds, and cue weapons with a speed that makes human reaction feel geological by comparison. She carries Standard Missile-2s and SM-6s for air defense, Tomahawk cruise missiles for land attack, torpedoes, a 5-inch deck gun, and Phalanx CIWS as the last line of defense, a rotary cannon that can fire 4,500 rounds per minute at targets that survive everything else. She is not a ship that was built to absorb hits. She was built to prevent them. 281 crew members, average age 22, each with families watching the news, checking deployment clocks, counting days. You're on that ship now, maybe below decks, maybe in the Combat Information Center, surrounded by screens and soft blue light and the hum of electronics that never sleep. This is their night. Now flip to the other side of the scenario, because the threat doesn't start in the air. It starts in a room somewhere ashore, a command post, a targeting cell, men who spent weeks watching satellite imagery, building a firing solution, rehearsing the timing. The Donald Cook has been operating in the Eastern Mediterranean as part of a larger force posture, her movements partially predictable because warships operate in patterns. Patrol boxes, transit routes, replenishment schedules, patterns are vulnerabilities. The Iranian hypothetical here draws on real capability. The Noor anti-ship missile, a reverse-engineered derivative of the Chinese C-802, subsonic, sea skimming, on active radar homing, effective range pushing past 120 kilometers, guidance that goes autonomous in the terminal phase, which means once it locks, no radio order can recall it. They also have the Qatar, a land-launched variant with similar characteristics, improved in recent generations. And in this scenario, they've chosen carefully a 4-round salvo launched in rapid sequence to arrive near simultaneously, intended to saturate point defenses. The logic is brutally sound. Even the most capable air defense system has engagement windows, a finite number of intercepts possible before the next threat arrives. If 4 missiles arrive within seconds of each other from slightly different bearings, they force the system to divide attention. One might get through, and one is all it takes. On their strategic calculation, a disabled or sunk American destroyer changes the Mediterranean political equation overnight. It creates a moment of shock, of hesitation, of congressional panic. It projects power they desperately need the world to believe they have. It's not suicidal, it's a bet. A calculated gamble that they can score one hit and immediately control the narrative, claim the engagement was defensive, and force a diplomatic restraint that limits the American response. That's the plan, clean on paper. But here's what they got wrong. They built their entire scenario around the assumption that those 4 missiles would find an isolated ship reacting from behind the curve with a crew that needed seconds to orient and respond. But they were not accounting for what the Aegis system has already been doing for the past 11 minutes. Because here's the truth about the AN/SPY-1D radar. It doesn't react to threats. It catalogs them continuously, automatically. Every aircraft, every surface contact, every anomalous radar return within hundreds of miles is being tracked, tagged, and monitored in real time. The Combat Information Center isn't waiting for an alarm. It's been watching. 2:33. Before the missiles even leave their launcher rails, a space-based infrared satellite operated by U.S. Space Command registers the thermal bloom of pre-launch activity near the Syrian coast. It's subtle. It might be nothing. But it goes into the system. 0236 and E-2D Advanced Hawkeye. Airborne somewhere over the Eastern Med in support of the Carrier Strike Group operating 180 miles to the west, cross-references the contact. Its AN/APY-9 radar sees a new track, low, fast, sea level. A second one, seconds behind, 237. The USS Donald Cook's own Aegis system acquires all 4 tracks. 4 distinct signatures, sea skimming, inbound, bearing, consistent with coastal launch origin. In the Combat Information Center, the Tactical Action Officer, and let's call him TAO because that's his world, sees the picture resolve in front of him in under 3 seconds of system processing. His hand doesn't hover. He doesn't wait for confirmation from 7 layers of command. He fires. That's the training. That's the doctrine. That's why you spend thousands of hours in simulators, so that when the moment arrives, the hesitation has already been rehearsed out of you. Engagement authorized. Weapons free. 238. First SM, 2 Block YIIB launches from the Mark 41 vertical launch system forward of the bridge. The sound is unlike anything most people ever hear. A controlled detonation, a column of fire and white smoke punching upward. A second missile follows 1.4 seconds later. A third. The destroyer shudders slightly with each launch. Not damage, just the physics of something very heavy leaving very fast. You feel it in your boots, in your chest. If you're in a berthing space below decks, you're already awake, already reaching for your gear, because your body knows before your brain does that something real is happening. 238-14. Missile 1, inbound track designated Bandit 1, is intercepted at 22 kilometers. The SM-2's proximity fuse detonates the warhead in a sphere of fragmentation at 4 meters from the target. Bandit 1 tumbles, dead. 238-19. Bandit 2 is still coming. Sea skimming at 15 meters altitude, 280 knots, hugging the wave clutter to defeat radar discrimination. The Aegis system has already handed the engagement off. Second SM-2 intercepts at 18 kilometers. But Bandit 3 and Bandit 4 are spaced differently. The launch sequence staggered them deliberately to stress the engagement timeline. They're 9 seconds apart and closing. 238-31, Phalanx CIWS comes online. The system doesn't need a human decision to fire. Its engagement authority is already set. The radar dome spins. The fire control solution updates at 100 times per second. When Bandit 3 reaches inside 1 kilometer, the close-in kill zone, the 20mm Gatling erupts at 4,500 rounds per minute. The sound is not a bang. It's a rip, a tearing of the air, a mechanical shriek. Bandit 3 detonates 800 meters from the hull. Fragmentation rings the water. The ship's superstructure takes paint damage from debris. That's it. That's the closest any of those 4 missiles gets to the USS Donald Cook. Bandit 4, the final one, the one the targeting team thought might slip through in the aftermath chaos, meets the second CIWS mount on the ship's port quarter at 1,200 meters. Dead. 4 missiles, 4 kills, 0 penetrations, the entire defensive engagement, 63 seconds from first intercept to last. Less time than it takes to brew a cup of coffee, less time than a commercial break. In 63 seconds, 281 sailors lived because a system built over decades of investment, tested and upgraded and integrated until it works better than the threat can evolve, worked. But the engagement isn't over, not even close. Because the United States military doctrine doesn't stop at defense when an ally's ship is targeted, not when the attack was deliberate, not when a targeting solution was developed, refined, and executed against a U.S. Navy warship in international waters. The rules of engagement carry a second paragraph, and the second paragraph isn't about absorbing shots. It's about ending the argument permanently. 241, the Joint Operations Center receives the after-action report. The attack was unambiguous. Launch origin was confirmed. The targeting cell, the mobile launchers, it's the coastal radar suite that built the firing solution, all geolocated, all confirmed hostile, all still sitting in place because whoever launched believed the political calculus would freeze the American response. That belief is the second fatal miscalculation of the night. 244. Presidential authority for a proportional response is already in the pipeline. The word proportional in military doctrine doesn't mean equivalent. It means calibrated to eliminate the capability that was used and degrade the will to use it again. 4 missiles came east. 32 are about to go west. They come from 3 different platforms because that's how the U.S. operates when it's serious. Not one launch, not one vector. 3 simultaneous threats from 3 different domains that no air defense system, however capable, can queue and engage fast enough to defeat all of them. The first package launches from below the surface, a Los Angeles-class submarine positioned in the central Mediterranean. You'll never hear it. You'll never see it. Tomahawk Block 4 cruise missiles punch out of the VLS tubes, breach the surface, orient, and disappear into the terrain following flight profile. Range, 1,000 plus miles. Speed, 550 miles per hour. Circular error, probable, under 3 meters. These aren't aimed at a city. They're aimed at a building, a specific room within a building. The second package comes from above. F/A-18E Super Hornets off the Carrier Strike Group 180 miles west, each loaded with AGM-84H SLAM-ER standoff land attack missiles. The Slammer's man-in-the-loop guidance means a human being watches the target through an infrared seeker in the final seconds and can abort if the picture changes. Precision not as a preference, as a doctrine. The third element is electronic warfare and SEED, suppression of enemy air defenses. EA-18G Growlers push forward with AN/ALQ-218 and AN/ALQ-99 jamming, collapsing the radar coverage that any ground-based air defense in the target area depends on. By the time the Tomahawks arrive, the defense picture is white noise. Imagine standing inside that command post when the first missile impacts. The building was designed to be hardened, reinforced concrete, redundant power, the kind of structure that was built during a time when precision munitions meant something within 50 meters. The Tomahawk doesn't care about 50 meters, but it cares about the specific room where the targeting data was processed. 251 Tomahawk impacts begin. 7 strike the coastal radar installation that provided fire control support for the launch. Radar arrays, generator facilities, hardened bunkers, all of them receiving purpose-built JDAM-equivalent warheads or penetrating variants depending on construction. The coastal radar site is no longer a radar site. It's rubble and silence. 254, the mobile launcher sites. These were the hardest targets. Mobile, repositionable, potentially already moving after the launch. But here's the thing about mobile launchers. They need roads. They need fuel. They need communication with command. And they leave thermal signatures and tire tracks. 3 of the 4 launcher vehicles are struck at or near their post-launch positions. One had moved, but not far enough. 257, the command node, the targeting cell, the room where the decision was made and the geometry was solved. 2 Tomahawks, 1 penetrating warhead, 1 thermobaric follow-on. The structure ceases to exist as a functional facility. 0303, the Slammer package reaches its targets, a missile storage depot, and a logistics node supporting coastal defense operations. The depot had been photographed 3 weeks prior. The inventory estimate was significant. Whatever was stored there is no longer an operational concern for anyone. 0311, final Tomahawk impacts on secondary command infrastructure. Communication towers, a relay station, fiber optic nodes that fed the coastal surveillance network. Total engagement window from first Tomahawk launch to final impact, 27 minutes. You're in the same amount of time it takes to watch 2 episodes of a television show, less than half a commute. In 27 minutes, every node that contributed to the decision to shoot 4 missiles at the USS Donald Cook has been retroactively unmade. Now, let's talk about what that means. 4 Iranian missiles launched, 4 intercepted, 0 impact on the USS Donald Cook beyond 2 slightly scorched panels of superstructure steel that will be repainted before the ship reaches its next port. 0 casualties among 281 crew members. In response, 32 precision munitions, delivered from 3 platforms, 7 distinct target complexes struck, coastal anti-ship threat capability in the target zone reduced, by conservative fictional assessment, to roughly 12% of pre-strike operational effectiveness. And how long will it take to rebuild what was destroyed tonight? Coastal radar infrastructure of that type and complexity, 18 to 24 months minimum, assuming no supply disruptions. Mobile launcher inventory requires acquisition, transport, field preparation, and crew retraining. The command and targeting network requires physical infrastructure, personnel with the knowledge to operate it, and the institutional courage to re-establish it after watching it get erased in 27 minutes. The asymmetry isn't just in hardware, it's in time. They spent weeks planning. They spent years building. They spent one night losing it. And the USS Donald Cook? She's still out there, still on patrol. Coffee's probably still warm somewhere in that galley. Now step back from the timeline and look at what this scenario is actually teaching us. Because there's a deeper lesson buried in the arithmetic. Modern deterrence fails when one side fundamentally misunderstands the other side's decision cycle. The Iranian planners in this scenario made a classic overconfidence error. They assessed American restraint as hesitation, and hesitation as reluctance, and reluctance as an opportunity. They believed that diplomatic caution in previous engagements reflected a red line the U.S. would not cross. They were wrong about what the line was. The line wasn't attack us. The line was demonstrate you are willing to sink our ships. The moment that line was crossed, doctrine took over. Not emotion, not politics in the immediate sense. Doctrine, the pre-planned, pre-authorized framework for responding to exactly this kind of attack. By the time any political actor wanted to pump the brakes, the Tomahawks were already subsonic and terrain following and 4 minutes from their targets. You can't unfire a cruise missile, but you also can't unprogram a doctrine built on decades of operational experience. That's the real power demonstrated tonight. Not the missiles, not the radar. The fact that the response was built before the threat even existed, designed, rehearsed, embedded, so that when the moment arrived, the only question was execution, not decision. Which raises the question I want to leave you with. In a world where response cycles are measured in minutes, and every escalation carries escalation's own response already loaded in the system, does traditional deterrence still work? Or are we in an era where the only deterrence that matters is demonstrating, once, that you're willing and able to act inside the enemy's decision loop? What does this reveal about the future of naval conflict? Let's discuss. Subscribe for more strategic analysis.